if you have any, and we can just kind of keep it flowing that way. And we should have a little time at the end too for more questions. But if anything we say sparks a question, feel free to put it in the chat or just, you know, unmute yourself and go ahead and ask it. That's the beauty of small groups. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. And our group is Western Wisconsin for Nonpartisan Voting Districts. We are way over in the west part of Wisconsin. And, oh, actually, let me just do one more thing. Oh, okay. So tonight we're going to talk about gerrymandering, what it is, and how to fix it. And some of you may have seen this graphic before. This is one of the first gerrymandered districts. It was in 1810. So this is not a new issue that we're dealing with here. So my name is Jenelle. I'm an organizer with Pierce County Grassroots Organizing, and I'm here with Ann Leek.
Hi, I'm Ann. I'm just volunteering with Jenelle. I'm a retired educator, and in my retirement, I like to keep busy with things that matter, especially to Wisconsin. So I've gotten pretty involved in this gerrymandering issue. So welcome tonight. I'm happy. I hope we can have a useful discussion together.
So a little bit of background, just so you know what our group is. We're a grassroots organization based in Pierce County, Wisconsin, which is on the border with Minnesota. And our mission is to empower and support Pierce County residents in advancing prosperity in our communities by working together through relational organizing. And we have identified redistricting as a really high priority because it's preventing us from doing a lot of the other things that we want to get done. And so that's why we're putting a lot of energy into redistricting this year. So we founded last year this project called Western Wisconsin for Nonpartisan Voting Districts. And we collaborate with some of our local League of Women Voter chapters. We're a member of the Fair Maps Coalition. We're nonpartisan and local. And our goal is to build grassroots power to bring an end to gerrymandering in Wisconsin. And this is always a great reminder for us when we feel like there's nothing for us to do, that we're slaves to the people in power. But we have to remember that the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. And we know that we, the people, have power, and we're going to talk about ways that we can utilize that together. So in this presentation, we'll talk about gerrymandering and its impact, some solutions that are on the horizon for us, hopefully, what we can do specifically, and then we'll leave more time for questions at the end.
Okay, so I think perhaps the audience here is familiar with gerrymandering, and so you probably know these terms, but we just want to talk quickly about three terms that are tossed around a lot with this issue. The first one, of course, is gerrymandering, which you know probably is the intentional drawing of districts to advantage one political party. And as Jenelle mentioned, this is named for Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry, way back in the early 1800s, who created a district to his advantage that a newsman termed looked like a salamander. So that's where this image and the name came from. And next, nonpartisan redistricting is what we're hoping to get done to divide the state, Wisconsin, in a way that thinks about compactness, geography, communities of interest, and municipal lines, things that people care about in a nonpartisan way and not according to the way people vote. You probably have heard that the Iowa model is one that's often mentioned as a model that we might like to borrow from in a future redistricting. Iowa is well known for its compactness and its division along municipal lines, as you can see in the map of Iowa. Wisconsin is anything but those two things. And the last one, fair maps, just means nonpartisan redistricting, and that's kind of the issue that we're trying to get across in Wisconsin, that this year we want a fair map drawn for the next 10 years. And let's see. And then just the basics of redistricting. It's because of the census, because of the Constitution, every 10 years, people have to be counted in this country. And then the states have to redraw their legislative and congressional district maps. And the Constitution says these districts must have fairly even populations. And in Wisconsin, what we're working with are 99 assembly representatives, 99 assembly districts, and there are 33 state senators, 33 districts. Each of those senators represent 3 of the assembly district areas. And next, I think. And then there are different ways in the country of doing this redistricting that's mandated. Not every state does it in the same way. 17 of them use independent commissions or political commissions, groups of people that are politicians in the state, or groups of people that are just assigned or sort of hired on to do this redistricting, or some kind of hybrid model. And then 33 of the states have the legislator charged with drawing the new maps. And drawing is kind of a sticky term because, in fact, the legislators don't usually do the drawing, but they're in charge of creating a new map or getting a new map created in some way. And Wisconsin, of course, is one of the 33 where the legislature, according to the state constitution, is charged with drawing the new lines. In some states, the governor has veto power over what the legislator draws, and in some states, the governor does not. Wisconsin's governor does have, at this point, veto power over a map that the legislator would draw or present to him. And in the past, except for 10 years ago, in the past, the legislature and the governor have not agreed in the last 40 or 50 years, and the map has had to go to the courts to have the courts decide what map is fair and can be used. And the next one. And here's, I don't know if any of you have seen this. This is a wonderful presentation put on by Wisconsin Farmers Union. It's short. We're not going to watch all of it. It's quite fast, but it explains gerrymandering very nicely. So we're just going to watch the first minute and a half or so of it.
Over the last several years, Wisconsin has repeatedly made national news for having some of the most gerrymandered maps in the nation. Let's take a look at what that means. State lawmakers represent the people who reside in a defined area called a legislative district. Wisconsin's legislative districts, created by the majority party in the legislature in 2011, were found by federal courts in November 2016 and in January 2017 to be an unconstitutional political gerrymander that unfairly dilutes the votes of over half the state's citizens in violation of both the First and the 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution. The current partisan map was purposely drawn to favor one political party. Using computer modeling and sophisticated data algorithms, legislators in the majority party pack voters of the opposing party into as few districts as possible, so the minority wins big in those districts, but doesn't win many overall. On top of creating some oddly shaped districts, this also sets the stage for extreme partisanship. Elected officials don't hear from constituents with other points of view because they've all been drawn into other districts. In fact, the districts have been drawn to so heavily favor the incumbent that new candidates don't even bother to run for office. In 2016, 38 of 99 state assembly candidates ran unopposed in the general election. For democracy to thrive, we need competitive legislative districts and real elections. Not only does partisan gerrymandering poison our democracy, it's expensive, and Wisconsin taxpayers are footing the bill. Rather than drawing fair, nonpartisan districts, Wisconsin has spent over $4 million to defend the current gerrymandered maps. Tax dollars should be used for public needs like roads, schools, and infrastructure, not to defend political battles the majority of citizens do not support.
Okay. It goes on to talk about what you can do, and we are going to talk about that later in this presentation as well. So again, it was pretty fast. The graphics I thought were really nicely done, but it impacts states, and it's not just Wisconsin, and it's not one political party or another. Both political parties do this in different states in the country. You really see that one party has control of the state. Legislators are not accountable to their constituents. They're in what they term, what they consider a safe job. They don't have to listen to constituents. People are not running against them because they know they won't win no matter what they try to do. So we really lose out on equal representation. And again, it's not just Wisconsin, it's other states in the United States that have gerrymandered maps. And it does cost money. The video mentioned $4 million was spent defending and fighting against this gerrymandered map in 2011. And there could be more money coming up if we face another battle in trying to get a fair map presented in this year. And again, I think everybody knows about the extreme partisanship in this state now because of the gerrymandered map. So it's not a happy situation. It does need to change. And next slide. And here's a pretty good example of how unresponsive our legislators are. This is from Marquette Law School, which is a very reputable place to get polling information. We know about 72%, you see, Wisconsinites support this nonpartisan redistricting, and yet the legislature will not listen. We know that 75% of Wisconsinites wanted special ed funding in the last budget cycle. The legislature did not listen and voted down that extra funding. We know about Medicaid expansion, which is also happening right now, that 70% of Wisconsinites feel that it's a good way to support healthcare in this state, and yet it was voted down 2 years ago in the budget, and it's up for a great battle again in this budget cycle. And 81% of people want background checks on firearm sales, and the Republican legislators would not even sit in on a session to discuss that. There are certain issues where the public, the constituents, are not being listened to, and there's not much we can do when our legislators won't listen to us. And the next slide. Another really wonderful video that explains packing and cracking, how gerrymandering is done. It's done with coins here. It's a very interesting presentation. So this one is also short.
Partisan redistricting, or gerrymandering, is about fractions, percentages. These coins represent voters in an evenly divided state, 50 dimes, 50 pennies. They elect 10 representatives. That means each district map must contain 10 coins. Of course, real people don't live in neat rows, so let's mix them up. This is our hypothetical state. Let's see what happens if the dimes draw the maps. 10 coins in each district.
So first thing we do is pack the pennies. Give them 2 safe districts, but pack them solid. The remaining 8 districts are won by the dimes, by smaller but still comfortable margins. The dimes win 8 districts and the pennies win 2. The dimes overwhelmingly control the legislature.
Of course, if the pennies drew the district lines, the opposite could happen. Let's rig it for the pennies.
For the pennies, we pack the dimes into 2 safe districts and crack the remaining 8 districts and win by the same margin, 8-2.
Well, now that we've destroyed democracy, let's consider how this would look if the maps were drawn based on compactness and keeping communities of interest together. You get evenly divided districts in an evenly divided state. There are some that go heavily dime, there are some that go penny, but that's to be expected. People live where they live, and that's what democracy is about. It's not about party bosses rigging elections for them.
Janelle, I did not get to see the
Redistricting.
Gerrymandering to avoid the problems of gerrymandering.
Terminate gerrymandering.
Pardon me?
The video did not show on I got just the first screen. I didn't see the whole video. Did the rest of you see the video?
No.
Oh,
No.
I'm so
No.
sorry.
So, yes,
me-
we didn't get to see his demonstration. We see the setup, but the demonstration didn't show. Is that the same for everybody else? Yeah?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry.
Seen it though, it's easy to find on YouTube and I've seen it before. It's excellent. It's good to use it.
Do you guys want to see it again, or should I send the link around later? How do you feel?
Send a link around, I would say.
Okay, I'll do that. Sorry about that.
Technology. But the one thing I did want to say about this, he as he throws the coins and shows how districts can be packed or cracked, manipulated, more and more with computer algorithms and the ability to just dissect all the pieces of information that are now available on states and people and populations and voting, it's potentially becoming easier and easier to gerrymander because so much information is available and computers can go through permutation after permutation trying to find the best case scenario for whatever the map makers are trying to create. So it's becoming more and more concerning because of our ability to use computers to dissect data on people.
It wants to play. Okay. So we're going to just take a few minutes to dive in a little bit into Wisconsin. This is an example of how our congressional districts have changed. So on the left, we have the 2003 maps, and then on the right, we have the 2013 maps.
I think you need to share the screen again.
Oh my goodness.
At least I'm not seeing it.
Here we go. All right. So now you can actually see it. So you can, the left is the old maps and the right is the new maps. And you can see how the lines were a little bit more straight. It's called compact and contiguous, so these districts were a little bit, look a little bit better than the districts we have now, where I actually live in the 7th congressional district up here. And so it dips way down into the 3rd congressional district. And if you look at the cities and stuff, you can kind of see, oh, we're excluding a little bit of this vote that might be more progressive, and we're going to take a little bit more of this rural area that's a little bit more conservative. And like Ann was saying, you can be really calculating in who you want to include and who you don't. And really, this is because they've used partisan data. So they have the data of how we voted in the past, and that's how they can be so specific. And that's why we want nonpartisan redistricting, where we're not using past voting data. And then digging in a little bit more, we're in Western Wisconsin. So here are some examples from Western Wisconsin, but we have Dunn County, which is neighboring to me, that has 40,000 people that live in it. And an assembly district is 57,000 people. And yet.
No, I'm not seeing that slide.
Really?
We're still on the congressional districts.
Is it there now?
No.
This has never happened to me before. I'm going to try this one.
There you go.
All right. I'm not sure what's happening, but I will keep going with this. Let me know if it continues to be a problem, because something weird is happening. So Dunn County, even though it only has 40,000 people living there, has been divided into 4 assembly districts, even though an assembly district only needs 57,000 people. This is St. Croix County. Can you see St. Croix County?
Nope, stuck on Dunn.
Gosh, I wonder what's happening. Anne, would you be able to try sharing it?
I'm disabled, it says, so.
Are you able to now?
No.
All right, I'm gonna try again. I'm sorry, this is so unusual.
There we go. There's St. Croix.
Yeah, but I'm afraid it doesn't switch between slides. Anyway, let's try it again. So St. Croix County has 90,000 people that live in it. It, in theory, could be divided in two, but it's actually divided in four. And I'll just point out real quickly, because there was a question about this, about drawing fair maps and drawing community maps. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but part of the reason that we've been asked to draw community maps is that so when a county does have to be divided, like St. Croix County has to be divided at least in two because there's 92,000 people that live in it. It's divided in a way that makes sense for the people that live in that county. So for example, if people in southern St. Croix County all go south to shop or something, and people in northern St. Croix County all kind of go north to shop, like that would be a good place to divide it. And so those are the types of maps that the People's Map Commission is asking us to draw to help them make really sound decisions when, for example, a county has to be divided. And we'll come back to that, but this is a good time to start previewing that concept. Okay. I'm going to take a slight tangent here just to mention that what we're talking about in this presentation so far is really political gerrymandering. So it's giving an advantage, an unfair advantage to one political party over another political party. But you may also hear in the news of other types of gerrymandering, like prison gerrymandering, racial gerrymandering. And so I just want to mention them here. The same tactics of packing and cracking that we talked about can be used for racial gerrymandering. So you can pack people of the same race in one area so that they win that seat, but they win no other seats. Or you can also completely dilute their vote by cracking them into lots of different districts. And so this is something that we need to be on the lookout to. Not only are we not using past voting data to draw districts, but that we're also not disenfranchising large groups of people because of race. And one specific example that'll ring a bell in everyone's mind is that you all remember the water quality issue that happened in Flint, Michigan. And if we look at the districts that were drawn through Flint, they were completely cracked. So Flint, Michigan basically had no strong representation. There was no one representative that had their interest in mind. And that's part, or maybe wholly, the reason that their water quality was able to plummet the way it was. And so, you know, sometimes you think, oh, you know, is this really important? You know, how much is my vote being diluted and how does it impact me? And then we have real concrete examples where this is, you know, beyond the statistics that Ann gave about what the people of Wisconsin want and what happens. There's some really dire consequences to gerrymandering.
Yeah, and neither of your slides that you had to go with that showed, but the explanation was very clear. So.
Okay.
So we're still stuck on the PowerPoint that's not advancing. There, okay, but we'll move on. So again, I did mention that there are basically in this country two ways to redistrict. Either there's the legislature and the governor, or there's some kind of nonpartisan commission that's created in some states. And still, as with other data that we've shown you, this shows that people want a nonpartisan commission more than they want a legislature or a governor to do the redistricting. Certainly there are people that still don't know and understand what the situation is, but by far and away, this nonpartisan commission seems to be the fairest way for a state to get a fair map. And the next slide, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm not sure.
No.
Nope, it's not coming through. Nope, Janelle can't, nope, okay, so we're gonna have to switch out every time.
I don't know how to do it otherwise.
And so perhaps you have seen this map. About 5 years ago, an effort was made to get a referendum going around the state to at least try to have our voices heard in the redistricting fair maps process. So far, there are 56 counties that have passed either a referendum in the county or at the county,
County board.
what's the word? County board, thank you, sorry, the county board level. Again, this is non-binding, it's only advisory, so the legislature in Madison can totally ignore this, except that it shows that people are on board with this process. It's important to Wisconsinites, we're interested in it, and we really would like the legislature to consider a fair map. There, that one worked.
Did it work? Oh my gosh. All right. So now we're going to transition into ways that we can end gerrymandering. And again, if there are any questions as we're going through this, feel free to let me know, including I can't see your screen. So we're going to talk about, basically there are two routes to ending gerrymandering. Route number one is right now, we're this summer or early fall, new maps are going to be drawn and we want them to be as fair as possible. And so that's one goal we have in mind, is just these maps now that we're going to use for the next 10 years, we need them to be fair. And then there's another thing that's happening in parallel, which is that we want a new law that would give us nonpartisan redistricting automatically every 10 years so that we don't have to go through all of the effort that we're going through this year to make sure that our districts are fair. So we're first going to talk about our maps that we're going to get this year. And then next we'll talk about the law that we hope will change things forever for us into the future. So first, raise your hand if you've heard of the People's Map Commission. Yeah, maybe half of us. Yeah, great, awesome. So the People's Map Commission was created by Governor Tony Evers, and it's a commission of 9 people. None of them have ever held public office. It's nonpartisan. There are Republicans and Democrats on this commission, and they all agree to nonpartisan criteria. And their job is to prepare maps for the legislature. So the legislature will prepare their own maps, but the People's Map Commission will also create maps that will be advisory. And we can present them to the legislators and legislators and say, okay, this is a map that was created in an open, transparent way. Please pay attention to it and maybe adopt it even. So they've listened to the public. They're still taking community input, and the next step that they've asked for is for these community maps. And they're using a very transparent process. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So what they've done so far is they've had hearings in every congressional district, which you can go onto their website and listen to still. They're very fascinating if you haven't already. They've created criteria for drawing the maps. And what they would like now is for people like you and I to draw community of interest maps and submit them to them. And then also submit maps of assembly districts, congressional districts. So they're really interested to keep on hearing from the public. You can also just submit comment if you have a comment of something, so it doesn't have to be a map. And if you're interested in doing that, you go to their website. This band across the screen down here is the header on their website. And you can click on work and records, which shows what they've done. And then if you want to contact them, you just click on the contact button. So I'm just going to take a quick pause on communities of interest because this is kind of a hot item right now. They're hoping to collect these by the end of June, as many as possible. And so a community of interest is a group with significant shared interests that deserve careful consideration by the people that are drawing the maps. And that can mean lots of different things to different people. For me, I think about the watershed of the river that goes by my house. I think about where I go shopping and where my friends live. So it can mean lots of different things to lots of different people. But the important thing is that the People's Map Commission will be able to aggregate all these maps and put them on top of each other so that when they do have to divide up a county or some other kind of district line, they can do it in a way that really makes sense for the community. And so next, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the timeline. So right now we're working on the budget. Some of you may have heard. And we are going to receive census data in mid-August to early September that will be able to trigger the actual creation of the district maps. In the meantime, most likely that new piece of legislation for nonpartisan redistricting will be introduced, and Ann will tell you about that in a second. But as most of us know, and what has happened in the past, is that the maps that the legislature will introduce will not be fair. They won't be nonpartisan, and therefore the governor will most likely veto them, and then everything will end up in the courts. And then the last item to mention on here is that the deadline for new maps is April of 2022. So this could actually spill a little bit over into next year. So the decisions for the maps will go into the courts, which I think is part of the reason that it's so important to have a lot of grassroots energy on this, because we know that even judges read the newspaper, and we really need to win this effort in the court of public opinion so that we can help sway both legislators and judges. And so there are a few things going on, and I've put a hodgepodge of logos here. These law firms don't all go in the same bucket, but Law Forward is a Madison-based law firm. I encourage you to Google them and check out what they do. They're very interested in strengthening democracy, and they are already preparing to bring forth any litigation if needed if the maps aren't fair. So they're very much on the side of having nonpartisan districts, and they're going to be paying really close attention. And they have a couple very senior attorneys on board that are experienced in this area and will hopefully advance our cause. The National Democratic Redistricting Committee, you may have heard of them. They have identified Wisconsin as a state that they are paying very close attention to, and said they may even litigate in Wisconsin, even though they're a national organization. So that's another one that we can keep an eye out for, and check them out if you want. Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, they have already done, it wasn't litigation, but it was a rules change where they wanted the courts to not take into account any information, any discovery, and that has been denied them. So the rule change was turned down, but they are very much in favor of the status quo of the party in power being able to draw maps in their favor, in the favor of the party in power. So those are three law firms, not all with the same intentions, but that are all paying really, really close attention to this, and will be very active once the governor vetoes the maps.
And the second thing that we're hoping to have happen, as was mentioned before, is a bill to create a Fair Maps Redistricting Commission in Wisconsin, so that the responsibility would be taken away from the legislature and put towards a nonpartisan committee. And this bill was introduced on Monday in Madison by the two authors, Senator Jeff Smith and Representative Deb Andraka, and they have some co-sponsors, including a few Republican representatives. They're looking for more co-sponsors, and they're certainly looking for the legislature to vote on this bill. So again, what it would do is use the Legislative Reference Bureau, which already exists in Madison, which helps the legislature create fair, appropriately worded, appropriately thought out bills, and then creating a citizen-led redistricting advisory commission. And though this could happen quickly this year, the thought is probably that they will, the hope is that there will be a fair map presented this year, and that this commission might be in place for the next redistricting in 10 years, but that's a little bit up in the air. It doesn't have a bill number. It was merely introduced by Senator Smith on Monday. He has introduced a similar bill in previous years, and it has always died in committee. It's never gotten a hearing on the floor. This time it has to change. So the action that we want you to take is coming up. One of the things we hope you can do is centered around this bill. Aha, and there we are. What you can do. So here are a few things that you can do to try and get a fair map in Wisconsin, or an ungerrymandered Wisconsin. So support the bill. The best thing that we can do right now is just to ask people to contact their legislators, their representatives and their senators, state reps and state senators, and ask them to support this Fair Maps bill. They can support the legislation. It would be great if they would co-sponsor the legislation. So that's one thing you can do. You can ask friends to do. You can put on your Facebook page or whatever, however you can get in touch with people to contact their legislators. And another thing that would help is, this is at the national level, the federal level. You've probably heard about the For the People Act, which has so far passed in the House, has a little bit more challenge in the Senate. But what it would do, one of the many things, aside from strengthening voting rights, which we know are important, is eliminate the gerrymandering in congressional districts in the country. So the congressional districts at the federal level, but that filters down to the state level districts as well. So you can, next slide, please encourage everyone you know to contact our state senators, because they haven't taken a vote on this bill yet, Tammy Baldwin and Ron Johnson, and encourage them to vote for the People Act.
Awesome. So that's all about legislators. Now we're going to go back to the People's Map Commission, because what they create using our public input will have the potential of really moving the needle towards fairness. And so we really want to support them in any way we can. So our project has launched a contest for drawing fair maps. So if you like this kind of thing, drawing assembly districts, there's software that's really easy to use where you can do it, and you can even check, is your map fair, is it not? And you can win up to $599 in cash. So check it out. I put the link in the chat, and I'll send it out as a follow-up as well. But check it out if you would like to maybe draw maps of the entire assembly districts for the entire state. And next, submitting your community of interest. So our project, which is based in Western Wisconsin, we're reaching out in 3 ways to get people to draw communities of interest. One is in-person events, another way is on Zoom, and another way is we have a guide on our website that people can use. It's step-by-step guide, so anyone's welcome to use it. That will walk you through the steps of creating your community of interest. And I put that link in the chat right now too, and I'll send that out later. And if any of you are interested in doing this, because I know some of you were thinking of maybe collecting these maps in your area locally, I'm happy to talk to you more about what resources are available through the Fair Maps Coalition and through the people that make the Districtor software. So this is a really hot item right now for people to get engaged with. And I think it's a really productive way to reach out into your community, because it's very nonpartisan. You're just asking people to tell you about their community. And we encourage you to join your local Fair Maps group. So we have some people here tonight from North Shore, Grassroots North Shore, no, Fair Maps, North Shore Fair Maps. Got it. But there are groups all across the state, and really it's a fantastic way to stay connected. You could start a new group if you wanted to, but there will be a lot of fast changing pieces as we go into August, September, and into the future. So it might be really valuable for you to be in contact with a team and hooked up through the Fair Maps Coalition so that you can stay abreast of everything that's happening.
That's sort of the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening. We do want to have time for questions or any other comments or any other sharing that you have. There was a question in the chat about the Fair Maps bill, about the deadline for co-sponsors. And in fact, I don't know that, again, the bill was introduced, but it wasn't introduced into the legislature. It was just Jeff Smith and Deb Andraka saying, we have this bill, we're going to do this. My understanding is it's still sort of sitting with the Legislative Reference Bureau while they are helping with the wording. They're crafting the bill, so it doesn't have a number for either the state or the assembly. But I'm sure that that information will be shared once that happens. And so I don't know about co-sponsors, but probably sooner rather than later would be a great time to contact legislators and ask them to support this. Are there any other questions, burning issues that we didn't talk about, or anything that you want to share with us that we didn't mention that is good for people to know? Because it's important for me, it's important for us to spread the word. The more light we get on this issue, the better it is for Wisconsin. Once the census numbers are out in August or September and the maps become a reality. Yeah, Brad.
I'm representing the Verona Action Team, which is a progressive group in Verona, a suburb of Madison. We are very much a packed district. We have two Democratic legislators. Sandy Pope is our assembly person and John Erpenbach is our state senator. So we have 75 to 100 people on our list in Verona that have worked the last few years, generally elections, but this is one of the issues that we want to follow and hopefully make an impact. So I'm hoping, Ann and Jenelle, that you keep us connected. And if you need to contact some people in the Madison area, we would be willing to serve as contacts. There are a number of local groups doing this, as you said.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Yes. Again, the more we can spread the word, the better it is for this issue. I think most of Wisconsin was caught sleeping 10 years ago, and it just can't happen again. So I think that we have some momentum now, and we have to work with that and just try to increase the visibility of this issue and what the people want. So great Verona, and Oregon down there, progressives is also a really
yes.
So it's a great part of the state with a lot of grassroots action. Yeah, Ann, did you, or no, Lynn?
Hi, I told Jenelle and Ann earlier that my dog isn't feeling well, so I had to like run in and run out, but he's settled down now for a minute. So I might have missed this, but if you don't belong to the Fair Maps Coalition on Facebook, that's a really good resource as well. Mm-hmm. But probably, so you probably talked about that. So I just wanted to mention Tuesday night, 4 of us met with one of the map drawers from North Shore, and we actually drew maps for our area. And it was really fun and interesting. And I'd really encourage everybody to do it if you haven't done it already. It was through Districtor, but your local area, and maybe you have resources where people can find map makers, but it was really an excellent experience. So I'd highly encourage, and as you said, the more maps, the better.
Yes, yeah. And there are trainings, there are people willing. Janelle is very willing to help support that, walk people through the steps to get to understand Districter and how it works. So yeah, that I think will become more and more evident in the next month or so, which is when we need these maps. We do need people to take part in that and make it fun. So it's a good idea when groups meet together and try and work on this together.
I'm wondering what people are doing. I'm wondering what people are doing around the state to actually engage with voters other than just the people on your team. What are people doing for outreach?
Well, Janelle, we've got some events planned. So Janelle, maybe you can share.
Yeah. I mean, we've tried a lot of different things, and I think they're all very worthwhile. We've done some phone banking, we've done some deep canvassing. There are some really good scripts on deep canvassing if anybody's interested in doing that, because that can really help people change their minds. Right now, because it's nicer out, we're trying to focus on in-person events. Because I think people in general are getting really tired of being on Zoom or talking on the phone. So we are organizing in-person events. Oddly, it seems several of our in-person events are going to be at breweries because they're very happy to have groups like ours. But we have our first one on Thursday where we're encouraging people to come and draw their community maps. So we're going to have 2 people with computers set up, and then we'll just have people draw their maps. And if they draw a map, then they get a beer for $2. So the piece of advice I have there is we need to incentivize people to come to events like that. But we'll also be asking people to reach out to their legislators and a lot of other things. So my feeling is right now I want to put my energy into in-person events because I think it helps raise awareness. But I also think the most important thing we can all do is just asking 3 people we know to come to a presentation like this, or come to your meeting that you have, or engage them, because trusted messengers are the ones that are going to be able to get people on board. So if you hear about fair maps from someone that you trust, then people are way more likely to listen and be on board than if, a complete stranger invites someone, or they see someone holding a sign in the street or anything like that. So.
Yeah, and Lynn did ask for the deep canvassing information. So Janelle, I'm sure you can send that out, or if you've got a link for it. The other thing that I'm trying to do with a group of people, although we haven't gotten very far in this, is to make connections with organizations around our area that are issue advocates for something like conservation or education or healthcare. Groups that would care about legislation that is going on or isn't going on in Madison, and try to get a presentation with them about why the legislature isn't listening to them about specific issues, and then try to tie that to gerrymandering. So that's another way maybe you could think of branching out. If you know of specific issues in your area that people really care about, but that Madison is not responsive to, and probably gerrymandering would be tied to that, then ask if you could make a presentation, and then you're widening your community a little that way. It's harder to do, especially as summer rolls around. These kinds of groups are not meeting so much, but it's another way to try and find new ears for these issues. Yeah, and Kate.
Yeah, I was just going to throw out kind of a counterpoint to meeting in person, is that I wouldn't have this opportunity right now if we weren't doing it this way. So I really appreciate you doing this and, kind of keeping this type of thing going or available. I know the weather's nice, so it's nice to do that more frequently. The second thing, and I guess I'm interested in, and if anybody's had any experience or what your thoughts are, but last year there was a bot developed called ResistBot, and I don't know if you've heard of it or if you've seen it at all. It's on, you see things on Facebook. Okay. Anybody? No. So resist bot anyway. What you can do is you can write letters to your legislators. You can do things at the state level. You can do it at the federal level. You can do to the president. I think it's called I don't have the URL offhand, but I think if you just type resist bot in Google, you'll pull it up. Anyway, you can write letters and get things going where you can, and I've started to do this more. I did it some last year. I never got anything, that had maybe more than 20 or 25 people. Maybe it was even less than that. Just, send my letter or whatever. But if you form your letter in such a way that it's generic, it can either be used across the state, it can be used nationally, if it's a national issue, like, January 6th commission or something like that. Anyway, so that's, I guess I'm plugging that because I think it's a pretty cool app to come out of the whole, everything. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing that. I'll have to look into it. Any other questions, comments, shares? We're certainly willing to hear all good ideas or hear what's happening in other parts of the state as well, because it's important for us to know who's doing what, where, and how we contact people. Aaron, you got a question?
Well, it was more of a comment, because I definitely really encourage everyone to do the communities of interest map drawing, just to help out with that. But I know that like drawing the assembly maps and like submitting your own proposals can probably be pretty scary. But that's something that I've been doing a lot of work in terms of researching like the rules of redistricting and the precedent and things like that. So like that's something where I'd be willing to like help if anyone needs has questions about how to use Districtor or other applications, or making sure that you're not splitting counties and not splitting municipalities and calculating results and all the other kind of parts that go into redistricting, because it's actually like pretty complicated in Wisconsin compared to most states. So it's definitely something I can contribute on.
Super. How can people, what's the best way to have people connect with you?
I mean, I guess email is probably the best for just all purpose. But I do a lot of stuff on Twitter as well. So if you're on Twitter, you can see my stuff and also ask questions.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I'll put my email in the chat.
That would be super. Very good. Yeah, that is complicated, but very useful. The more maps that are out there, the better. It just gives people a better sense of what's possible. And what's possibly fair. Yes, Lynn, another hand.
I just wanted to say to Aaron, I follow you on Twitter. So I was really interested when I saw your name. I'm like, I know that name. And thank you for all your posts. They're great.
Okay, good.
That's really cool. Thank you.
Star.
Of course.
Twitter star. Great. Thanks for helping in advertising, whatever you're doing. I'm not a Twitter person, so my chances of seeing you are thank you, because you're reaching a different crowd than I might, so that's great. Okay, anything else? Jenelle, any last words? Again, I thank you for taking the time to show up tonight. It's so important what you're doing, that you're interested in this issue and that you're willing to do the work to help spread the word so that we can have a fair map in the fall for Wisconsin.
Yeah, thanks everyone for showing up. It's really fantastic, and I'll send out a follow-up email. So if there's anything else you want to talk about, feel free to respond to me, and I can loop you in with Ann or anyone else. But thank you very much for spending this time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. It was
Good
really
night.
excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Ann, all good?
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that with me. That was great. Have a good night.
Yeah, okay, good night.
Bye.